Hello and welcome to InFocus with me, Curtis Hinton, on quewsnews. In this special edition of InFocus, we are talking about Trump 2.0. The day before his inauguration, I'm speaking to our American political correspondent, Wyatt Sial, and we have got Danny Posthill, a comedian here in the UK, where Trump sometimes comes into his material. So both of you, welcome to the programme. We are a day before the inauguration. Wyatt, you are in Houston, Texas at the moment.
Yes.
What's it like on the ground?
I would say that just like before the election, there's been this sense of optimism. You see this especially with like the protests that they're planning. In 2016 or 2017 during his inauguration, there was about 500,000 protesters. Now there's only 50,000, which is 10x decrease. It shows you how the
I mean,
what were you gonna
across the
say?
world, there's a lot of positive thoughts about him coming in. If you're not Ed Davey here in the UK, of course, and there's a lot of thoughts that it's quite a good optimism around the world.
Yeah, this is like a broader trend we're seeing, especially in the West as a whole, of like a rejectment of liberalism, the liberal establishment, and moving back towards a more conservative anti-establishment that we currently see throughout Europe and now the U.S.
Danny, welcome to the programme. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's the day before the inauguration. If I asked Donald Trump how's he feeling, what would he say?
Well, everybody knows that I need to fix the country. We've had Kamala, we've had Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe has done a dreadful job, a really terrible job. I mean, the economy, he's probably the worst president in the history of our country. I say that a lot, and I mean it. I really mean it. He's done a dreadful job. I need to fix the economy. I need to fix the border. There's so many people coming over the border. It's so bad. It's really bad. And to top it off, I didn't even invite Keir Starmer, who is even a worse leader than Joe Biden, by the way. This is a guy who got asked what's the difference between the Tory party and the Labour Party? And he basically said, well, we get the Tories who froze mortgage payments in lockdown. And then we've got me who freezes pensioners, which is really bad. He's a terrible leader, a really bad leader. And I think I made the right decision. But then, of course, we've got Nigel Farage, who's going to be turning up, a good friend of Donald Trump's. And, of course, what I love about Nigel, is he does this thing where he looks like he's constantly throwing his hands up into the air, like it's an invisible ball. And of course, he's always said, I don't want to be in Europe, France don't want to be in Europe, Germany don't want to be in Europe, Manchester United simply have no choice. But I just think, I think he's very confident. The only thing is, he's, after the 2 assassination attempts, it's obviously going to be indoors now. So I think when it comes to things like that, the safety has got to be so important. That'd be the only thing I would be worried about if I was Donald Trump, the safety of it all. Who in the right mind has the type of security who dealt with it the way that when he did try to get assassinated, they were like,
Yeah.
he's over there, there's a man on the roof. Like, why didn't the security see that, It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I was shouting at the screen, especially watching the BB. That's another story anyway, as you well know.
We are talking to from the UK, Danny and I. It just shows you the big influence that the US elections and the US president has on the modern world, obviously now more than ever. Do you feel that sense, Wyatt, in America? Do you feel that you've got an influence still? America is still the super powerhouse once you have a leader of the free world who wants to lead the free world?
I think so. Just look at, for example, the Israel-Hamas situation. Donald Trump is not even president yet, and they already worked out a ceasefire deal. The United States is still the most powerful country on earth if it has the right leadership. Under Joe Biden, you've seen the United States go to its weakest point since the Cold War. And under Donald Trump, hopefully, we can re-energize our superpower status and bring America back to its rightful place at being on top of the world.
Danny made a point to say that it is inside. So it has gone inside from the original location of the Capitol steps where he was sworn in back in 2017. The new location is inside the Capitol building. Do you think this is because of the -6 weather predicted, or do you think there's alternative? I mean, Danny alluded to the fact that it is probably a safety reason more than it is a forecast reason. Do you think the same, Wyatt?
I think so, because if you look, the temperature is not that cold. Especially if you compare it to previous presidential inauguration, they're using the weather as an excuse, but the real reason why, like Danny said, is safety.
And I mean, there's a credible threat. I mean, if you're Donald Trump, we spoke just before we came on air, but if you're Donald Trump and someone comes up to you and says, we can't 100% tell you that you're safe. I mean, he's not a young man, so maybe another bullet wound he might not survive. Obviously, it depends where it is. No one would survive regardless of age. But there is a huge thought. I mean, it comes on Martin Luther King Day for the third time ever. The first one was with Clinton in '97, then Barack Obama in 2013. Big day for America. A lot of optimism coming up. Danny, with your comedy routine, I want to ask you, now, you can just do voices, but you found yourself kind of getting into the ins and outs of the politics and what Trump stands for, not just what he says and how he says it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, when we're talking about this, even if, we're going to have it outside, Donald Trump is just so confident. He would say something like, well, I mean, even if they did try, they would miss again because they're losers. They'd get a dreadful shot. I mean, you look at the shot he had last time, it was a dreadful shot. He missed. He literally had turned around and it was some. I mean, he would criticize the shooter, that's just the way. And that's why Donald Trump is just so entertaining. And I think you need a leader like that. You need someone who's just going to be like, right, I've been shot at twice. I'm not scared. So, I mean, obviously, like what was said about the with Israel and Palestine and Hamas. Hamas, soon as Donald Trump got elected, it was like an immediate ceasefire. And then you ask, I mean, I was on Facebook and I seen people online said, Joe Biden was the one who caused the peace. And then Donald Trump's trying to make out that he was the one. He's a narcissist, he's this, he's that. And I'm like, no. They basically went, oh, no, we don't want any part of this because this guy is not going to stand for anything. So we're going to, we want a ceasefire, and I think he's going to do the same with Putin. And what I like about Donald Trump is he's basically everything he said he was going to do, he just does. And I've never seen a politician do that. And one thing I've always said is I would rather trust a billionaire who becomes a politician than a politician who becomes a billionaire.
No, that's a very good point. I think touching on the Russian war with Ukraine, day one, he said within 24 hours of taking office, he will leverage relationships with both Putin and Zelensky, and he will end the war. Why do you think that could happen? I mean, is that realistic?
I think it will happen. I put bets with my friends. I put £100 bets on that he'll make it stop. Putin knows that Trump takes no prisoners.
What?
I agree, but I maybe not 24 hours. I would definitely agree that it would get done, but I don't think 24 hours is possible. Unless, they've been talking behind the scenes this whole time, then it's definitely possible.
Well, there was stories not that long ago saying that they had conversation, even Elon Musk. I mean, since winning the election, he has come out and he's shifted to a resolution within 6 months. I mean, Joe Biden's had a whole term to deal with this almost. So, 6 months is still nothing compared to what they've endured so far. But it's not just about ending it. It's also about sustaining that kind of relationship and stability in that area of Europe. Do you think that's achievable? Because, if he loses, but if the Republican loses again, J.D. Vance at the moment is probably going to be the likely name on the ballot in 4 years' time. If it's not him, could we just see another attack from Russia? We saw an attack on Crimea back in 2014. 7 years later, an attack into mainland Ukraine. Obviously, it is part of Ukraine, Crimea, or was. Could we just see it happen again and again and again? Or is there something more at play here, like a treaty that could come forward that he will get both parties to sign and not just an agreement for a ceasefire or an end of the war?
I think that if the United States sits down with Russia and they come up with a deal with Ukraine and the U.S. and the West as a whole upholds their end of the bargain, Russia will look to expand more. But if the West doesn't hold up their end, Russia will play the game that they've always played, especially in the last 20 years, and try to get more land in order so they can feel protected against America and the rest of the West. The entire problem with America and Russia currently is that the U.S. has been encroaching slowly and slowly onto Russia, and Russia naturally, as any country would, it feels threatened. And the Ukraine war is not, in my opinion, is not like an aggressive attack from Russia. It's a reactionary attack from NATO expansion and American interest in Eastern Europe.
Danny, when it comes to material, do you cover, I know you cover obviously Trump, but do you cover political topics, or do you kind of make it a little bit more lighthearted? Because when people come to see you, I mean, we're having a horrendous time as a human race at the moment around the world. I don't think there's any happy news going on. Do you try to keep it a bit more lighthearted?
I do try and keep it lighthearted, but it depends what I do. I mean, when I play Comedy Unleashed in London, I can take the mick out of Keir Starmer as much as I want. I can take the mick out of Diane Abbott, you know. Whereas some audiences might go, oh, well, you can't do that because of this, and you can't. I mean, that's one thing. The woke culture has ruined comedy, because what it's done is it's basically it's put a cap on your creativity and how you write material. And I mean, a prime example is when I was in Los Angeles, and this is a true story. I was going along Venice Beach. I was with my ex-wife, and we seen this bar, and it was 2 cocktails for $20. And I went in, and I went to the bar. I said, "Hiya, mate." I said, "Can I have 2 margaritas, please?" And this guy looks at me and he goes, "Mate." I said, "Sorry, is there a problem?" And he just looked at me and he went, "How dare you? How dare you assume my gender?" And I was like, "Look, I didn't assume your gender. I just called you mate. It's a term of endearment in the UK." And he put his hand on my face and he went, well, not on my face, but he put his hand in front of me as if to say, talk to the hand because the face isn't listening type thing, you know. And he went, "I identify as non-binary." And this is where the woke thing starts getting out of control. And I just went, "Look, I didn't mean to upset you. Can I please just have 2 margaritas?" So when he went and made the drinks, this is when your comedian's brain kicks in, because I just thought, I'm not having this, right? So he makes the drinks, he comes back, he puts them on the bar. He said, "That'll be $20. So I put $5 down. He said, "That's $5, that's not enough." I said, "No, but it identifies as 20. So what I've done, I've just called out the complete BS of what this whole woke agenda is. I mean, isn't it crazy now that the fact that if you say that a man has a penis and a woman has a vagina, it's now controversial? And then you've got kids who are going to school and the parents have no right to tell them whether they can have an operation, where they can have their penis chopped off, you know? Donald Trump's took a stop to that, and I think someone needs to. It's just getting out of control. It's absolutely crazy.
One of his promises, he is banning transgender individuals in women's sports and in the military. He's ending Biden's policy to allow them in the military service and obviously into sports participation, men who become women, obviously, as there is an unfair advantage. They're also banning it in schools, something which I think it's not even just, you don't have to be against non-binary or transgender or anything like that to not want that in schools. I think that's just common sense. Surely we all grow up as we are, men and women, and then afterwards, if at 18 years old, when you're an adult, you make a decision, I don't think it's a decision that's like, oh, I want to be a female. Yes, you probably do feel maybe from 13, 14, you might start feeling like an opposite gender, but I think there needs to be at least a 2 to 5 year period where you are being spoken to by professionals, because you could be going through anything at the moment. Like it's such a, I mean, it's a difficult time. I mean, Wyatt, people around your age at the moment, have you seen a lot of people like this? I mean, at the moment, I'll be honest, just before you answer that, we're probably seeing an end to wokeness with the likes of Trump coming in. I think this is a big sign that the right, who aren't necessarily against wokeness, they're just not for it, had enough. Mm-hmm. And now they're speaking up against it. They're not cowering away anymore. They're not being cancelled anymore, because people know that just because you say a woman has a vagina and a man has a penis, that is not you attacking anyone. That is you stating biological facts. Are you seeing this, Wyatt, within Texas, within the college age?
I would say so. I would like to also say that I live in a more conservative area, so I see a lot less wokeness than most people do. But I see it especially also like on college campuses, which are notoriously known for being very liberal areas. you're seeing that, especially in my generation, a lot of us are a lot more conservative than we've ever been before. Like for example, like Gen X or baby boomers, whenever they were young in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they were a lot more liberal minded. However, in my generation, we're about even. So if we go based on natural the what you naturally, whenever you get older, you tend to get more conservative. So by another 20 years, my generation will probably be one of the most conservative generations in a very long time.
Yeah.
And one thing also with wokeness, like you said, is that with especially with the gender mutilation, because that's what it is. Um, what you're seeing now, especially in the United States, in some regions, you can transition whenever you're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, but you can't even own a gun until you're 18. You can't have a sip of alcohol until you're 21. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. We are all, we've all got a smirk on our face, but it's because it's just that silly, isn't it? I've got a 2-year-old,
It's because it's that
3-year-old
stupid, and
2-year-old.
how has it got like this? That's the thing. How
This
has
is the
it got
question.
like this? Look, it's got like this so quickly as well. It's not like it's crept up over 20 years. It's got like this over the space of about 5 years, and it just went, whoa, what's going on here? You know, how has this just become so ridiculous?
I think people
And
have
if
ran
you call
scared.
it out, you get called a homophobe or a transphobe
Yeah.
or a racist. You know, I mean, I think nowadays people are more concerned about if someone's a racist than people's own safety. You know, I mean, the prime example of that is the grooming gangs that have gone on in the UK, and then the government have just turned a blind eye to it because they're like, oh, we can't say that because it might offend a certain community. I'm like, I'm not being funny, but what about these poor girls who have
Yeah.
been raped and these poor girls who are going through all this trauma of
And I
what's
think
happened to
just
them?
to
It's
cut in there,
awful.
Danny, I think as well, the community that they're afraid of offending condemn these actions too. They are out there saying what the government refuses to say. So obviously we're talking about the
Absolutely.
Pakistani rape gangs. With Pakistani MED are coming out and saying that we condemn these. This is disgusting behaviour and they should be punished to the full length of the law. So it's almost like they're
So
using
why
them
aren't the
as a
government
scapegoat.
saying anything? That's the thing.
This is it. It's the government. Danny,
And to add on real quick,
Sure, yeah.
One thing I've noticed, especially with like the grooming gang scandal, is we have something very similar whenever it especially comes to African Americans here. Is that if you discredit, especially like among the wokeness, about especially recently with the prioritization of DEI, is that if you criticize it, you're considered a racist, you're anti-black, you're whatever that they want to call you. It's something very similar I see with the grooming gangs. If you criticize them, you're an Islamophobe, you're anti-Pakistani, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think the narrative does get set from the government a lot of the time. Like Danny said himself, they don't criticise it and talk about it for what it is, which means that when people on the right who then talk about it, they're labelled racist because they are talking about it and using the terms that they're using. And you do get labelled.
Well, people who have common sense now are getting called far right.
Yeah.
I mean, Keir Starmer came on TV and basically said, you know, he come out to speak up about the grooming gang thing. And I thought he was going to come out and say, look, it was a problem, this, that, and the other. No. He came out, he called everyone an Islamophobe, and he called everyone far right. Most of the population in the UK who disagree with what he said, are not far right. They're just concerned about people's safety. And that's the dangerous thing of what our Prime Minister's doing right now.
And we're not talking about one or two individuals.
Really
I mean,
dangerous.
it's disgusting even if it was one or two individuals. We are talking about thousands of young girls over a
Absolutely.
sustained period. Danny, I'm not talking about necessarily the rape gangs specifically here, but are you able to joke about this sort of thing? Not the rape gangs, but about the when it comes to like the trans and the wokeness and that sort of stuff? Or are you a bit worried about cancel culture?
Well, going back to American and British audiences, I mean, I play to Americans when I'm on cruise ships, and to be fair, what I find is Americans can separate things and they go, we're in a comedy club, a comedian's going to do jokes. British people, I don't know, I think most British people are sick of it. They can't stand it. And I feel like they want me to go further than I do, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I do a joke about when I do the Los Angeles joke, to set that joke up, I say, oh, do you know anyone in from Los Angeles, you know? and I say I was going to move to Los Angeles, but I couldn't find a tent that I liked, and they laugh, and and even liberals have come up to me and they openly told me that they voted Democrat, and they laugh about that, when if you really look at it deep down, you could go, oh my God, he's doing jokes about homeless people. That's so bad because they're in
Yeah.
such a bad way. But all I'm doing is I'm doing an observation. It's a punchline of an observation of what's actually going on. Um, I wouldn't say I go too far. I'm very calculated in what I say and what I do because I'm going through a divorce and my ex-wife needs a hell of a lot of money off me. So if I get cancelled and I lose all my work, then I lose my house. So, I'll be in a lot of trouble. So I've got to be very careful what I say to a certain extent. But I feel like now, the more I push it, the more audiences love it because they're like, I'm with you, Dan. Most of us are with you.
Yeah.
And the minority who do, well, what does that tell you to the minority?
It's
But
true.
the problem is when you're on a cruise ship, they'll listen to the minority and they'll go, oh, sorry, you've upset someone. We're going to have to cancel the rest of your gigs. And that's how difficult it is.
I mean, talking about kind of cancel culture in a way, people attending Trump's inauguration, obviously what we're here mainly to talk about, Obama, but Michelle Obama isn't there. And there's speculation she's not there because it's Donald Trump. Wyatt, I mean, what's the feeling like in America? I mean, no disrespect to Michelle Obama. Obviously, Obama and Trump were seen quite recently sitting next to each other at the funeral of President Carter, laughing and joking. So clearly there's no hostility between those two gentlemen. But what's the issue with Michelle?
Honestly, I have no clue because she, first of all, like you said, she skipped Jimmy Carter's funeral. Then she isn't going to be at the inauguration. And right now, there's a big confusion on what's going on with her. There's been a few rumors, but there's no data behind it. Maybe she's going through something or the Obamas are going through something. But honestly, no one really knows what's going on right now with Michelle Obama.
Danny, if I asked Donald Trump how does he feel about Michelle Obama not going to his inauguration, what would he tell me?
Well, I've met Mike many times. He's a great guy, really great guy. We've had a lot of conversations, and we've had some disagreements, and I think that's what it might just be. Did I just
It's going
say
to be
that
an
out
interesting
loud?
date. And I mean, the 4 years afterwards is going to be huge. And I think in a vital time for not just US politics, but for global politics. We spoke about before what he plans to do. So an immigration overhaul. He's going to look to pardon the January 6th rioters. Wyatt, just on that, is that something that American people want to see? Do they want to see these rioters pardoned?
From what I understand, it's not going to be all of the protesters and rioters. Some of them, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis,
Okay.
from what I understand. Certain protesters that didn't do anything will be pardoned, but the rioters will be will have their sentences upheld.
And rightfully so.
Majority of Americans don't really support the January 6th pardonings, but I believe that especially the people that were just there and protested peacefully should be pardoned, not the rioters.
He's also looking to end the war in Russia and Ukraine, cut regulations, which is something which a lot of Americans see as a positive thing because it can bring down costs for the average American across the board. Obviously, we said about the transgender rights within the military. Ed Davey called him a threat and a danger to the world. That's quite dangerous words over here. The lead, obviously, Ed Davey, Liberal Democrat, probably comes on after Danny at a comedy club most nights. But it's a bit of a silly thing
who
for him to
takes
have said.
notice of Ed Davey? Who votes for the Liberal Democrats? Ever since I've heard of the Liberal Democrats, I thought, what do they even stand for?
Liberal Democrats do well at local elections.
They're just there. It's just
Yeah.
what is it that they would? Over the years, you look at the history of politics, right, and you look at the Labour Party. They've always, well, back in the day they did. Since Tony Blair took over, it become the red globalists. But before then, it was the working class people who had unions, who wanted the workers' rights, and I agreed with all that. And then we had the Conservatives who were going, well, they have their values where they go, well, if I work hard, I should get in return what I'm working hard for, and I get that. But then the Liberal Democrats, it's just like, I just don't know what is it they stand for, really,
And each leader
And when
stands for
somebody
something
like Ed
different.
Davey comes along, to me, he's just, as my nana would call him, a happy daft. What does he do? What does he? I don't know. I would like to sit and have a conversation with him and say, look, mate, how would you see the country going? I mean, they're into the net zero and all that stuff, and
They want to
they're all
rejoin the
for
EU. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, well. First of all, what does that tell you? They're going against democracy. Why would you want to vote for someone who goes against democracy?
It's a very good point. It's a very, very good point. Wyatt, with the inauguration is tomorrow, January 20th, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Do you think many Americans will be tuning in on TV, or do you think more Americans? I mean, he had the popular vote, of course, but do you think that there are some now a bit skeptical? Now we're here, the day has arrived where Donald Trump is now the 47th president of the United States.
I think a majority of Americans will be tuning in, obviously. And I think a majority of his base are still happy. You obviously had that whole disagreement that happened during Christmas with the budget and the H-1B visas situation. But one, like, especially that I've seen among the Republican Party, is that they are able to disagree, but at the same time still support each other. Where you disagree on one issue, it doesn't mean that they will automatically hate you and no longer support you, like you see with the Democratic Party nowadays.
You won't get your back turned on. And do you see an invasion of Canada and potentially Greenland during these next 4 years?
I think Canada will probably not happen anytime soon. Thankfully, Greenland, possibly, I could see a possibility where it happens, but I don't see it ever becoming a state. Maybe a territory, but I think Greenland has a better chance of becoming independent than an American territory as of right now.
I think, yeah, both are interesting. Obviously, Justin Trudeau is stepping
I mean,
down.
personally, I
Canada.
don't think Trump should take over Canada. If anyone's going to take over Canada, it's got to be Jordan Peterson. I mean, well, we need to make Canada great again because I'm the person who speaks sense and I can't wokeness, and that'll be all out the window, which is what Justin Trudeau did. And I just think Jordan Peterson take over Canada. Yeah, he'd be brilliant.
Danny, Trump has just been sworn in. What is his speech? What does he promise the American people?
Well, I promised the American people more jobs, especially from the African American community, especially all those people who call me a racist. And by the way, I was at a Trump rally, and people said to me, "I bet it was full of all these white supremacists." I said, "Well, there was Asians for Trump, there was Mexicans for Trump, there was black people for Trump, there was African Americans for Trump, black people for Trump, and there was also the gays for Trump." And I got to say, the gays for Trump were the greatest people. They were kicking their legs. It was so fantastic. They done the can. It was so great. The greatest can I've ever seen in my life. I reckon he's gonna. People who actually don't have Trump derangement syndrome are gonna listen to me, and they're gonna make sure that they're gonna realize that petrol prices are gonna go down. We're going to have tariffs on every single country that I think are not right. We're gonna sort those things out, and we're going to make sure that America is the greatest economy in the world, and people are going to be happy they can afford their groceries, and we're going to be a great country. We're going to be a fantastic country, and we're going to make America great again.
Danny, where are you? Are you on tour at the moment? Are you performing at the moment? Obviously, not tonight. You're with me, but.
I'm currently in Hartlepool awaiting my Chinese takeaway, mate. I'm not going to lie. I fly to Egypt tomorrow to do a show. I'm doing a hotel in Egypt. So I'll be watching the inauguration in Egypt somehow. It'll probably be on my phone. I'll be sat there watching it on my phone. But yeah, I've got to watch it. I mean, I was watching the election results. I just literally finished a gig and I was up till 5 o'clock in the morning, drinking loads of coffee, watching it, going, what's going to happen, It's exciting. I love it.
It is an exciting time, and it's an optimal time for the world. There's a lot of optimism around. Danny, where can people find you online? It's not just Trump that you do or perform. You have been blocked by a certain Diane Abbott in the past and probably still are blocked.
Well, Diane Abbott did block me because she basically, a lot of people said, because she's the black MP, that basically called me racist. Well, I said nothing about a race, but these are the people who basically try to look for racism where it doesn't exist. And those people are stupid, you know. So, Diane Abbott blocked me on Twitter basically for doing her voice. But they were the videos that were getting more views than anything, you know.
People like the political.
But yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Well, TikTok for the next, I don't know, 2 days. Is that getting banned? I don't know. What's the deal with that?
I think we're safe here in the UK. I think it's the US that's got the issue.
Oh, is it really?
I think it is.
What is this? What is the story with that?
Wyatt, we'll touch on that quickly before we wrap up. But Wyatt, what's the situation at the moment? I mean, as far as I'm aware, today the 19th, it's going to get cut off.
They say it's that China controls the data, but the real reason why is that it's not an American-owned company that has control of the data. It's a Singaporean company that has control of the data, and the United States government wants to maintain its monopoly on American data. Then you see, one thing I find hilarious about the situation is that all of these TikTokers are moving over to RedNote, which is an actual Chinese app, which is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, and now China's actually getting their data.
So it's almost driven them.
They're getting cancelled on the other platform. You know, it's incredible, isn't it?
Sorry, Danny, where can we catch you on Twitter or X and Instagram and that? What's the details?
So Twitter, it's at Posthill Danny. On X, sorry. Don't upset Elon Musk. And then TikTok, Danny Impressions. And then on Facebook, it's Danny Posthill Comedian. And on Instagram, it's Danny_Posthill. And I'm not on that blue, whatever it is. You know, let's have a different website to go against Elon Musk. Let's have a different platform. And everyone's going to me, you need to get on this, Dan. I'm going, no, don't. Because I know you and I know your politics and I've spoken to you about your politics and I don't really want to go into that echo chamber. I'm not going to lie.
Danny, Wyatt, thank you both so much for coming on the programme. Trump's inauguration is tomorrow and it's going to be an interesting time, not only for the USA, but for the rest of the world too. So thank you so much to both of you for coming on.
No problem.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, as I said, January 20th, tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. GMT here in London, Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. There's an optimist feeling around the world with wars ending, with economies growing, and America becoming a strong country once more. Let's see what happens as Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. You've been watching In Focus with me, Curtis Hinton, on QsNews.